Today I come to you humble with broken promises about things that I told myself I would not upgrade, the things that I bought in early 2020. But you know what? I'm here with the M1 Mac Mini, so let's just have a look at it in another super cool unboxing. All right, welcome to Mike Techs It Out. This is a super cool unboxing. It's been a minute because I haven't bought many things that were new. I think the last thing was the Switch OLED. This isn't a new product, but it's new for me, and this is the M1 Mac Mini. If you follow my channel for a while, you know in early 2020, I made the mistake of upgrading to the MacBook Air before, like literally weeks before they announced the M1. And then surprise, surprise, they released the late 2020 M1 MacBook Air, which wasn't a big deal. I had no intentions really of trading it in because I really just do light music work on it. But I lied to myself, and I actually do sometimes have like 10 to 15 tracks on there, and I get real crazy. And basically, that MacBook Air just couldn't keep up. And I know that the M1 is a lot more powerful. It's a lot more efficient, so I'm willing to see what it can do. So I traded in my MacBook Air. This is a base model, the 256 gig, which I initially was against because that's one thing I complained about with my 2018 MacBook Pro. I've been complaining about Macs on my channel since the inception, so this is just a continuous thing. This is my third Mac since I started this channel in 2019. Technically, I bought that first Mac in 2018, so it's not like I bought 3 Macs when I started the channel. I bought 2. It's not as bad. This was $650. It's technically $700 new. I got the student discount. And then with my MacBook trade-in, I ended up spending about $140 after taxes. So not too bad. I still took a loss on it. This is just as powerful as the 13-inch MacBook Pro. The baseline MacBook Air actually comes with a 7-core GPU. So this actually comes with the 8-core GPU, and this has a fan, so the performance is exactly the same as the MacBook Pro. So that's like another advantage of buying this if you already have like a monitor and keyboard setup, which I do. So I didn't really need the laptop. I don't really use laptops a lot even before everything shut down and we kind of got stuck in the house. That was basically my decision why I upgraded. Let me just get this open. I've been talking this whole time. As usual, Apple's got the classic shrink wrap. The thing that surprised me, first of all, this box was bigger than I expected, and it's a lot heavier than I expected. To really get a knife, I always gotta puncture this in my nails and do all kinds of crazy stuff on camera. All right, here we go, boom. Shrink wrap is gone. I've never really seen a Mac Mini up close. I've never owned a Mac Mini. I've had 2 MacBook Pros, an iMac, and the MacBook Air, but not the Mac Mini. So this is a first for me. Oh wow, this is big. The picture on the box makes it seem like it's gonna be like this, but this is literally like edge to edge. This is the full box. Like this is the whole thing. I mean, it's not huge, but I'm wondering if they're gonna redesign this next year. Look at how nice those peels are. I love the Apple peels. They're so nice. Designed by Apple in California. Ooh, I get a big silvery Apple sticker. This is premium Apple sticker. This is nice. And then we have our super premium power cord here. Now let me get this off. Without the box though, it is lighter. But considering they fit the same chip in an 11-inch iPad, this can definitely be thinner. We saw how small the iMac was, so we'll see what the future holds. This is where our ports are. I forgot you get USB-A with this computer, which is pretty awesome. I might actually put it facing this way, so I'll have all the ports facing me, because I plan on putting this like out of the way behind the monitor. So it'd be a lot easier to access everything if it was facing me. Pretty good I/O. You get Ethernet, you get 2 Thunderbolts, you got USB-A. I haven't seen USB-A in an Apple product in a long time. And HDMI. And then you got a headphone jack. I'm not even gonna joke about that. If they took that away, we'd be in a fight. We would literally be in a fist fight. Then on the bottom here, it just says Mac Mini. That's all you get in the box is just this and the power cord. Not that I was expecting too much. It's a pretty cool, sleek looking machine still, even though I do feel like this design could be smaller, especially because they don't need all this cooling for the M1. Now the other thing is they are expected to refresh the higher end models because the higher end models right now are still Intel based. So that is expected. The versions with like the M1 Pro and Pro Max, that's probably gonna be the first redesign this year for the Mac Mini. And then I have a feeling like soon after that, the lower end Mac Mini, this one will probably follow. So I'm curious to see what they do with this machine. It's a really, really interesting machine. So I'm gonna go and I might actually put it against my desktop and see how it does as far as rendering a video, and then let you know what my thoughts are. So I'll be right back. I am back with the Mac Mini behind me, where you can't see it. Anyway, it's been about 4 days since I got it, so I'm here to give you my first impressions. It's not really a full review because I haven't had it long enough to really make a full opinion on it. And with computers, it's kind of hard because they change over time. So there are a few things I didn't think about when I got this Mac Mini that are kind of a part of the Apple experience when you have an Apple notebook. For one, you don't have a webcam and microphone, so if you love using Siri, unfortunately you can't use it up here. I know it's disappointing, just, you know, calm down. No Siri unless you hook up an external mic. So also with no webcam, you can't do things like FaceTime unless you hook up an external camera, but it's just something that you probably wouldn't think about if you're going from having an Apple notebook to a desktop. Now, neither of those things I care about because I don't like Siri on the Mac. I think it's horrible. It's like the worst. I mean, Siri is not great anyway, but on the Mac, it's like significantly worse. And as far as webcam, I prefer not to have a webcam connected all the time, so I'm completely fine with not having one. The other thing is I didn't know if the Mac Mini has built-in speakers. It does, and they're not great.
Take it out. And walk up.
The built-in speakers are probably fine for like listening to a podcast or watching some YouTube videos, you know, like me. Might text it out, subscribe. But if I was gonna do something like watch a movie or listen to music, I would definitely hook up external speakers or headphones. The other thing I didn't think about either is you don't get any biometrics, no fingerprint to unlock. That is something that I've had with my last two MacBooks that I kind of miss a little bit. A lot of the times it didn't work right because the computer would restart for an update and they'd be like, you gotta put in your password, because I didn't use the computer that often, so it's not a big loss, and technically you can add it because the new iMac keyboard, the higher end one, that's $150, it actually has the fingerprint scanner built in and it pairs with the M1 Mac Mini. So you can technically add that functionality back if you really want to. I prefer to have a mechanical keyboard, so I'm definitely not going to, but they do have the option, you can technically add that back. Actually, pretty much all the things I mentioned can be improved or added, so they're really not a big deal for a computer this cheap. So you can get the computer and then you can kind of decide if you want these features and if you want to pay extra to get them. So let's get down to business about the M1 Mac Mini. This is my first experience with it, and I have to say from a day-to-day use perspective, this is the best Mac, hands down, that I've ever used. There were things that got on my nerves about Mac OS, and mainly is that it was slow. Like when I got my 2018 MacBook Pro and I had the Core i7 and the 16 gigs of RAM, and I was like, oh, you know, I spent $2,000, and then I got it, and then like day-to-day usability was the same as my MacBook Air. Like, it's just slow. The OS is just kind of slow. You sit there, you watch icons bounce, and you wait for stuff to open up. The M1 is just so much faster. Like, yeah, on a more demanding program, if I open it, it's still gonna take a little bit to open, but man, like this operating system is just way faster because of the optimization Apple was able to do, obviously making their own chips. But overall, what Apple did really paid off. I was really impressed by how usable this is now. On the Windows side, I'm just used to stuff just opening and flying through tabs and doing all that stuff. Whereas like on Mac OS, like yeah, once it opened, it was fine. But it's like going through different programs. I was like, come on, this is taking forever. And now, that's the thing of the past. It's so much faster. Speaking of my Windows computer, I had to put it through the test. I had to test this M1 Mac Mini for video editing. Not that I would realistically ever use it. I just wanted to see how well it could hold up because my workload now is pretty demanding. When I first started doing videos on YouTube, I actually was using the Mac to edit, and I was just doing like, you know, 1080p, 8-bit video, and DaVinci Resolve on my MacBook Pro. And after I had so many issues, I switched over to Windows because that computer was already struggling with editing videos. Now I'm just at the point where I'm doing 4K 10-bit video all the time. So if I want to edit on a Mac again, I would need a lot more horsepower than what this can offer me, but I was just kind of curious how it would do. So as I stated in the first part of the video, this is just a baseline Mac Mini, the 8-core CPU, GPU for my Windows desktop. I have a Ryzen 7 3700X. I have 32 gigs of RAM. I have a 2080 Ti. I also have a 1 terabyte SSD, which actually is not as fast as the Mac Mini, so that is one advantage that it had. I wanted to see if that helped at all. It really didn't make that much of a difference. So it's not like a super high-end computer. I mean, it'd be more mid-range by today's standards, but fair amount more powerful than the M1 Mac Mini. So there was just like 3 tests that I ran that I'm gonna go through really quick. I took my most recent Sensational Sunday News video, and I wanted to see how playback was and how long it took to render on both computers. This is probably one of the toughest videos other than when I do multicam videos. So even on my desktop computer, When I play this back, it's okay. When it gets to the part where there's a transitions, it does slow down, it stutters. When I went over to the Mac Mini, no matter what setting I chose, even if I put it to play at like 1/8 resolution, it still stuttered for some reason. And I even tried taking just the footage of me chroma keyed, like with the background taken out, and playing that, and it still stuttered in Premiere Pro. So I was like, let's just go ahead and see how long the rendering takes. So this is a 7-minute video, but it's a lot of effects, chroma key, and I had different backgrounds and all kinds of crazy transitions. So this does take a pretty long time to render. So my desktop, it took around 32 minutes to render. On the M1, it took 1 hour and 4 minutes to render, which on paper is really not bad. I mean, I have a desktop class CPU, a lot more RAM, way better graphics on my desktop. And yeah, it was double the speed, but also this is a $700 computer. This computer overall cost me around $2,000. So the weird thing with Premiere is even at 1/8 resolution, it should be able to play that back a lot smoother than it was. So I had to do some searches. I had to look it up. Apparently, Premiere is like the worst performing program on the M1 Mac. Even after they came out with the M1 specific version, it still performs way worse than Resolve and Final Cut do. So the next test I wanted to try was just taking the same clip in DaVinci Resolve, putting my LUT up there, chroma keying it, and then rendering it. So the issue I ran into in Windows, not on the Mac for some reason, on the free version of DaVinci Resolve, you can't edit long GOP files. So I just ended up doing the same basic chroma key in Premiere and throwing a LUT up there to try to make it as even as possible. And since Resolve is more optimized for the M1, I figured it'd be fair to do Resolve on the Mac and then Premiere on my desktop. So the desktop finished close to 6 minutes, and then the Mac Mini finished in close to 42 minutes. But this wasn't really an even test. It was just kind of a curiosity of mine. You got 2 different programs, so it's not gonna be equal. I tried to create a scenario where maybe the Mac Mini would have an advantage because it was using a program that was better tuned to the M1, but it didn't really make that much of a difference. It still kind of got steamrolled. I mean, it's a $700 computer, and the fact that it can handle the footage is amazing. So I'm already impressed by that. The other thing I noticed with Resolve that was funny, it actually played back the 4K footage. In Premiere, even when I just did the footage by itself that was chroma keyed, it wouldn't play back. Like, it would not play back smooth no matter what setting I had it on. But in Resolve, if I chroma keyed it, it wouldn't play back like in full native resolution, but if I went to half, it played back just fine. And then without like chroma keying and a color correction, even just doing this 4K 10-bit file on the Mac Mini, it really played back with no issues. So if I was using Resolve, there's a good chance that I probably could make my workflow work on the Mac Mini. And the last test I did, I wanted it to be as even as possible. Kind of wanted to give Apple as much of the advantage as I possibly could. So before I was shooting in long GOP, I don't know if it's GOP or GOP. I've never heard it said out loud. So yeah, I don't know. But before I was shooting in that, I used to shoot in ProRes. So I still had some of that footage. So I took the last video, I did another green screen video. I used Resolve on both my desktop and the Mac Mini. So in this case, my desktop finished in 2 minutes and 31 seconds. The Mac Mini finished in 9 minutes and 20 seconds. And the clips that I've rendered for these last 2 tests have been around 15 to 17 minutes because basically I just took the unedited footage and threw it in there. Overall, I'm really impressed with the M1 Mac. Like, yeah, my desktop did finish in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and it finished in 9 minutes, but 9 minutes is not unreasonable. It's a 15-minute clip with chroma keying done, and it's 10-bit. Even though it's 1080p, it's still 10-bit, it's still pretty taxing on the system, and it just handled it with no issues. I don't think 9 minutes is really that long to wait for a render. Like, yeah, obviously 2 minutes is better. If I was doing like lesser videos or less taxing videos that didn't destroy my computer every week, then I would definitely be fine with using this M1. Now, I also ran a test without recording because OBS was running in the background for all of these tests. So I just wanted to see without OBS running if it would change anything for either of these computers. So without OBS, my desktop did drop to 2 minutes and 27 seconds, which was like 4 seconds less. And the Mac Mini dropped to 8 minutes and 43 seconds. So almost a 40-second reduction without OBS recording. So yeah, again, this is definitely the best Mac that I've used. I would say that it's even better than my 2018 MacBook Pro. And mainly because I used to do things in Logic, like I'd be messing around with music, and if I had like 10 to 15 tracks, for one, it'd be screaming. Like the fans would just be kicking in at full gear. And 2, I would start getting errors, like memory errors. It would just start freaking out. Like this thing just handles things with no issues. There was one point where I did that hour-long render, it got hot. That was the first time I saw it get hot, and I was like, okay, I'm pushing this thing. But other than that, like the fan never kicks on. The thing is, even when I was pushing the CPU to 100%, I was still able to do other stuff on the computer. I remember back when I was editing on my MacBook Pro, when I started rendering, I didn't want to do nothing else on the computer because that thing was about to crash. First of all, it was extremely hot. It was like on fire all the time. And then it was just very much like, I feel like if I open anything, it's already kind of stuttery, the computer itself, it's just gonna crash. This thing, you could probably open a browser, do other stuff, and it'll still be fine. Now, would I ever switch back to Mac full-time for video editing? Probably not. The new M1 is great. I'm definitely gonna use it a lot more. I actually pulled out my keyboard because I've just been doing a lot more music because this thing is so snappy and fun to use. But for video editing, I prefer to be able to upgrade individual components. The only computer that Apple has that you can do that with is the Mac Pro, and that thing starts out at $5,000 for not very good specs. Like, I'm pretty sure baseline Mac Pro, my computer is faster than that. You do get the optimization, of course. There are things that Apple does to optimize the software for like video editing. I'd rather just spend the money and brute force it in Windows. Like I said, this was $2,000, but this was built up over like 2 years. I didn't start off with these parts. I replaced a lot of things and upgraded, but I'm able to do that, and I was able to upgrade to fit the workflow that I have now. Whereas if I still had my 2018 MacBook Pro, which I also spent $2,000 on, it would be way, way outdated. I would not be able to do all the stuff that I do now on it, and there'd be no way to upgrade it at all. And just out of curiosity, I went and priced out the 14-inch MacBook Pro to see how much it would cost to get something that would be equivalent for what I need. For one, I would have to get the highest M1 Max, and that's just for the graphics power because I need to match the 2080 Ti, which gaming-wise is now considered a mid-range card, but it's still more powerful than even the graphics for the M1 Max. Second, I will need 64 gigs of memory because it's unified, so CPU and the GPU share memory, and I have 32 gigs of RAM, and that's just, you know, for my CPU, and my GPU has 11 gigs of RAM. So the only option I would have that would come close to be the 64 gig option. Then of course I want a 2 terabyte hard drive. Basically right now I have 1.5 terabytes of SSD storage. Of course this would be way faster. The RAM is probably also faster than the RAM I have as well. To get something that's equivalent to what I have now, probably better in some ways, it would be $4,099. And then it wouldn't be upgradable. I would just be stuck with that forever. So in the future, I would just have to suck it up and spend like another $4,000 or $5,000 or whatever to get a better computer. Now, another thing that's important is I don't recommend buying the M1 Mac Mini. It's pretty cool, but there's rumors that the M2 is supposed to be dropping soon, like an M2 MacBook Pro. It's supposed to be launched soon, which means that everything else on the lower end will probably follow, like the Mac Mini and the MacBook Air. I'm fine with getting the M1 Mac right now because I wanted to maximize the value of my Intel MacBook before it dropped. So that's why I went ahead and traded it in now. But if you can wait, there's probably going to be an M2 version of this around the corner. And then also there's going to be the higher end version of the Mac Mini that's going to have the Pro and the Pro Max, which that could be a compelling computer. That might be worth a revisit to see how much it would cost for my ideal computer with the Mac Mini configuration, because I really do like this computer. But yeah, overall, I just kind of want to give my thoughts on it. It's a really amazing little computer. Like, it's definitely worth the value of $700. And that's not even from a Mac perspective. I'm still overall a PC/Windows guy. But even from that perspective, for $700, this is a really good computer, and not just for Apple, just in general. It's really powerful, it's super fast, and it has really impressive performance. All right, that's gonna finally bring this video to a conclusion, but if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get notified when I drop a video, and always do at least 2 things at the same time.